prepare yourself, because what I am about to reveal is so grave, so explosive, that many Britons still do not grasp the depth of the hole into which the country has been thrown. This is no exaggeration, no cheap drama. It is the UK's greatest diplomatic and security rupture since the Second World War, and it all began with a single, impulsive, and disastrous decision by Keir Starmer, taken without consulting anyone, without warning allies, without measuring the consequences. Because of one political gesture, the UK was expelled by Israel, its most strategic ally in the Middle East, the country that for decades saved British lives, prevented terrorist attacks, and kept all of Europe informed about threats from Iran, Hezbollah, Hamas, and extremist groups you will never see the mainstream media mention. Now, that protection is gone. Israel has closed its doors, expelled ministers, cut off intelligence, blocked agreements, and all of it overnight. And here is the point the press tries to hide. This breach does not just affect diplomats. It affects you, your family, your wallet, your security. What Starmer did has put the UK at a risk most of the population cannot yet imagine. And in the next few sentences, you will understand why, and why the whole world is watching, shocked, as this unprecedented implosion unfolds. 4 days before the diplomatic explosion, Starmer made two decisions that destroyed 75 years of partnership. First, he backed arrest warrants against Israeli leaders at the International Court, a move no other G7 country dared support without negotiations. Soon after, he announced a total arms embargo on Israel, including defensive systems like Iron Dome, which intercepts rockets and prevents civilian massacres. The issue is not the stance, it is the recklessness. Starmer told no one. Not the Foreign Office, not MI5, not MI6, not even Britain's own ambassador to the UN. When Israel realized it had been betrayed by a country that always called itself an ally, the reaction was immediate and devastating. British Minister David Lammy, already mid-flight to Tel Aviv, was denied landing, his plane forced to turn back over the Mediterranean, an international humiliation broadcast live on flight tracking apps. The whole G7 watched. Diplomats were stunned. And within the British government, the first clear sign that the UK had just crossed a line of no return. When Lammy's plane was turned away, the diplomatic world instantly understood. This was not a message. It was punishment. Hours later, Netanyahu appeared before the cameras with his security cabinet behind him. His speech was short, cold, and harsher than any ever directed at the UK since 1948. A country that abandons its allies in their hour of need should not expect friendship in return. Then came the blow no one thought Israel would dare deliver. All intelligence-sharing programs with the UK were suspended, with no return date. This means 17 terrorist attacks that Israel helped thwart in recent years will now go undetected. It means Israeli monitoring of Iranian networks, radical cells, and arms trafficking across Europe has been switched off. It means British energy, water, and infrastructure systems were exposed overnight. What Starmer did was not just a diplomatic blunder. It was a mutilation of British national security. And now every citizen, even unknowingly, is paying the price. And as Israel closed its doors, an even greater earthquake was silently forming in the Middle East. Saudi Arabia, the UAE, Jordan, and Bahrain, all strategic partners of the UK and signatories to the Abraham Accords, began questioning whether London could still be trusted. In closed-door meetings, Arab ministers said exactly that. If the UK betrays Israel like this, who guarantees it won't do the same to us? In other words, Starmer achieved something no other British leader had in 100 years. He turned the UK into an isolated country in one of the world's most dangerous and strategic regions. And when trust breaks down there, the consequences are swift and deep. The pound fell. Billion-pound projects were frozen. British startups were expelled from Israeli tech collaborations. And the word betrayal, a word rarely used in diplomacy, became a global trend associated with the UK. The country that once ruled seas and empires is now seen as unstable, weak, and untrustworthy. Inside the British government, the mood turned to absolute panic. The sudden resignation of Dame Barbara Woodward, one of the world's most respected diplomats, was the first internal sign that something was completely out of control. During a Cobra Committee meeting, Defense Secretary John Healey called Starmer's decision strategic suicide, while Home Secretary Yvette Cooper warned that the UK had become a vulnerable, unprotected target. The leak that followed was even worse. MI5 reports revealed that Iran-backed groups were already exploiting the gaps left by the rupture with Israel, probing the UK's security system, tracking weak points, and planning attacks that would previously have been intercepted by Israeli intelligence. This is not a future threat. It is happening now, and the British public, especially the older generation who lived through times of tension and conflict, again feel that icy sensation that the government has lost complete control of the country. Politically, the impact was as destructive as the security fallout. Rishi Sunak saw the opportunity he had waited months for, to position himself as the restoration candidate, the only one capable of salvaging the international relationships Starmer had destroyed. And it worked. Recent polls show the Conservative Party surging past 50% in voting intentions, while Labour plummets to humiliating numbers comparable to the 2019 crisis. The public is outraged, not just at the mistake, but at Starmer's arrogance in acting alone, without consulting Parliament, experts, or anyone. In the US, the mood is one of indignation. The CIA, which relies on the UK-Israel triangle to monitor threats across the Mediterranean, informally declared that if forced to choose between London and Jerusalem, the choice has already been made. The UK has gone from indispensable ally to dead weight in less than a week. The international reaction did not stop there. Former CIA directors, Mossad chiefs, and even ex-NATO leaders called Starmer's move the worst British strategic error since 1956, when the Suez fiasco humiliated the UK before the world. But this time it is worse, because it is not a military defeat. It is diplomatic self-sabotage. Eastern European countries, especially Poland and Estonia, have begun questioning whether they can truly rely on London in the event of a Russian attack. If the UK betrayed Israel, why wouldn't it betray us? One European minister said in a private meeting. For allies who depend on British moral and military support, this doubt is fatal. And for the first time in decades, NATO is seriously discussing the UK's reliability, something unthinkable until recently. The media tries to soften the blow, but behind the scenes, diplomats describe the situation as a permanent stain on Britain's reputation. Before I continue with the gravest information in this case, let me ask you something crucial. If you are against what Starmer is doing to the UK, click subscribe and like now. This is essential so more people learn the truth that the mainstream media hides. Our audience is made up of patriots like you, who refuse to see the country destroyed by reckless decisions. So support this channel now, because every subscription and like helps keep this information alive, while the government tries to silence those brave enough to speak the truth. And the financial damage is so deep, it has not yet been fully calculated. Israel has suspended investments in the British tech sector, collapsing partnerships worth billions. Israeli innovation funds, some of the largest in the world, have frozen over $4 billion destined for British startups and labs. Defense firms like Rafael and Elbit have ended negotiations with London. while American conglomerates, dependent on UK-Israel partnerships, are reassessing military contracts. Even medical and biotech research has been halted. The irony? Sectors Starmer claims to support, like health and universities, are now losing critical funding, precisely because of his decisions. The UK is not just being isolated diplomatically and militarily. It is being isolated economically, scientifically, technologically. It is a historic step backwards for a country that was once a global leader in innovation. But the most terrifying point was yet to come. And it strikes at the heart of daily life for millions of Britons. For the first time since 2001, synagogues, Jewish schools, and community centers in the UK have been left without direct support from Israeli security networks. The British Jewish community, which has relied for decades on Israel's expertise to prevent attacks, now finds itself completely exposed. Community leaders report a surge in threats, and experts warn that extremist groups have already spotted this vulnerability. Most shockingly, the police themselves have admitted they lack the resources to fill the void left by Israel. Worried families have begun seeking emigration to the US and Israel. Inquiries have tripled in just 48 hours, and while parents and grandparents try to protect their families, the Starmer government insists on downplaying the problem, as if it were just a diplomatic misunderstanding. It is not. It is a national security crisis, invisible to many, but absolutely real. In Israel, the message was clear and devastating. The UK can no longer be trusted. Labs have closed their doors to British students. Academic exchanges have ended. Journalists have been barred from press conferences, and the British embassy in Tel Aviv has been virtually isolated. An Israeli diplomat described the situation with a chill that should alarm every Briton. This is not retaliation. It is a demonstration of consequence. And, indeed, the consequence is brutal. Without Israeli intelligence, the UK loses its ability to monitor Iran's nuclear program, Hezbollah operations in Lebanon, Hamas financial networks, and ISIS cells operating silently in Europe. No other country, not the US, not France, not Germany, has the precision and penetration Israel does in these territories. In other words, Starmer has not only weakened the UK's position, he has blinded the country in one of the world's most dangerous regions. And when strategic blindness sets in, the side effects begin to cascade. Major defense companies like Lockheed Martin are already considering reducing British involvement in the F-35 fighter program, a program that guarantees thousands of jobs and billions in investment. Israeli manufacturers have suspended contracts, and cybersecurity firms have closed London offices, withdrawing technology that protected banks, hospitals, and even energy systems. It is as if, suddenly, the UK has regressed 20 years in defensive and digital capability. And while the political elite tries to pretend everything is under control, the international market sees the opposite. A country that has lost its predictability, its weight, and the trust of its most important partners. Analysts estimate potential losses of up to $100 billion in the coming years, and that number could grow. The question is, how much more is the ordinary citizen willing to pay for the mistakes of a prime minister who acts without consulting even his own team? Comment below where you are watching this video. I always read the comments, and it is remarkable to see Britons from across the country, England, Scotland, Wales, Northern Ireland, all worried about the future of this nation. Knowing where you are helps show that the people are united, that there are many who are awake and tired of being deceived by this government. So comment, which part of the UK is with us today? All of Europe watches with apprehension. The Baltic states, which depend directly on British support to deter Russia, are asking behind the scenes if they can trust the UK when they need it most. NATO officials are irritated, not just by Starmer's decision, but by the way it was handled, without dialogue, without planning, without strategy. The impression given is of a fragile government, guided by political impulses rather than national responsibility. And for allies living under constant threat, this is cause for panic. The UK risks entering a phase of diplomatic isolation not seen since the Suez Crisis, but now in a world that is far more dangerous, far more unstable, and far less tolerant of mistakes. What is at stake is not just British prestige, it is the future of European security. And as this storm gathers, Starmer insists that channels remain open. The truth, however, is that Israel has already declared there is nothing to discuss. Now we come to the darkest point of this crisis, the one the mainstream media is reluctant to admit. For the first time in decades, the UK risks being left totally alone in a hostile world. Israel is not just disappointed, it is convinced that trust has been broken beyond repair. The international community has already understood that the error was not diplomatic, but strategic. And as countries pull away, the UK loses access to information that has saved British lives for the past 30 years. From now on, any threat emerging from the Middle East, a missile, a cyber attack, a terrorist cell in formation, may simply go undetected. And here is the part that sends a chill down the spine of anyone over 45, who has seen what happens when governments gamble with security. Not knowing is as dangerous as not acting. And Starmer has put the country in exactly that position. Blind, vulnerable, and unprepared. And the big question that remains, the question millions are asking now, is simple and brutal. Is there a way back? Experts say no. Israel has made it clear that the rupture is permanent. The Arab countries are suspicious. NATO has lost patience. The US prioritizes Israel. And in the middle of it all stands a UK that is smaller, weaker, and more isolated than at any time in recent memory. Starmer tries to say he can rebuild trust, but how do you rebuild something you yourself destroyed without even consulting your cabinet? How do you become relevant again when the whole world has already seen that the UK is no longer a reliable ally? The hard, inescapable truth is that this crisis does not end today. It begins today. Every day without Israeli intelligence increases the risk. Every hour without cooperation creates new vulnerability. And while Starmer tries to save his image, the ordinary British citizen pays the price for the incompetence that has turned the country into an easy target. The only thing left now is to decide whether the UK accepts this new reality or finally demands accountability from those who created the chaos.